Good afternoon. Thanks for joining us today for an update with Banyan Gold. As you know, Tara Christie's CEO, and she's back to talk to us once again about her drill program that she just started. So looking forward to hearing about that. Before we get started, I will remind everyone that the presentation will contain forward-looking statements. If you'd like to know more about those, you can find them on the company's disclosures on their website. And there will be a Q&A period at the end, so feel free to input your Q&A there. And with that out of the way, I'd like to introduce Tara Christie, CEO of Banyan Gold. Banyan Gold trades on the Venture Exchange under the ticker BYN. Hi, Tara.
Hi, Deborah. Great to see you again.
Yeah, Thanks for joining us again. Yeah, it's been a couple months since we've got an update, and I understand you've got a new drill program underway. So really excited to hear about that.
Well, thanks. And yeah, it is, we've really got a great 2021 year lined up, and great to see that there's so many existing shareholders on the call today, as well as new shareholders. And I'm going to give you a full overview of the company for those new shareholders that have joined us, as well as an update for those of you that know the story. I'm an explorationist and really excited about this year. So, as Deborah said, I'm going to make forward-looking statements because we're out there looking for and expanding a really exciting deposit in a great area of the Yukon. Our main project is our AurMac project. It's located in Canada's Yukon, which is a great jurisdiction to be working in. We believe the property has multi-million ounce potential. We put out a maiden resource in May of last year, and that was the start of a transformative 2020 for us. It is a near surface, on surface resource, open in all directions. And you'll see from this presentation and what we have that it really is comparable to our nearby new mine that started in 2019, Victoria Gold's Eagle mine, which shows you that this type of deposit can be economic in the Yukon, and we're going to continue to advance ours towards that. Our near-term target is to get this resource from the 900,000 ounces that you have here up to where you can see we can have the potential for 2 million ounces, and we hope that our drill program this year actually shows you the framework of that, and that we're putting together the resource in 2022 or as soon as we can see that we're closer to that level. Our management team, we have a track record of success, and I'll show you who's involved in our team. Over the last few years, we've delivered on what we said we could do. We've used capital very, very well. That initial resource was $2 an ounce. We really know how to leverage our exploration dollars to deliver value for our shareholders, and we're well set up to do that here in 2021. As I said, we're located next to the newest gold mine, but also the newest high-grade silver mine. Mineralized districts are generally sometimes the best place to look for new mines, right in the head frame of an existing mine. We're going to have Victoria Gold, which is already cash flowing. They're going to be producing over 220,000 ounces of gold per year. It's the same age of mineralization as what we're seeing at AurMac, and I think you'll see that we have exceptional infrastructure, which is my next main point on why we're an exciting company to invest in. We have existing roads, power, communication, and even an international airport a short drive away. You'll also see that this jurisdiction actually invests in infrastructure with new infrastructure spending announced just this year. And it is a tier 1 jurisdiction. From a permitting perspective, I've got 2 mines that have been permitted in the last few years. Shows you can actually get through the process and get a positive outcome to your permit. We're working with a very knowledgeable First Nation, which has worked with the 2 mines beside us. They have businesses that are involved in mining, and which we use as part of our early exploration, but they understand how to work with mining companies and what benefits will come to the community from working with mining. And that's super important for projects getting over that development threshold. We're well capitalized. We were able to finance last fall, which has enabled us to start our program early this year. We're already drilling. I think we're 5 holes in with 2 drills turning now. And another really unique thing about Banyan over some of the other companies in the Yukon is we really are a year-round exploration story. We drilled all the way to December 15th. We started in mid-February with our drill program, just with 1 drill, now up to 2. We've got 15,000 meters planned for 2021, which means our shareholders can expect us to have continuous news flow through the year, and we'll be putting out news before our competitors even get out into the field this year. So there's that initial resource that we put out in May. It was a start of a great year for 2020 for us, and it's really provided us a foundation to build on. it's contained within 2 resources, the airstrip and the POWERLINE, and I'll talk about both of them. The airstrip was really what we were confident. We had our model there. We took it and we applied it blind to the POWERLINE area. And in just the first month and a half of drilling, way back in fall of 2019, we came out with 129,000 ounces at 0.61. Both of these resources are open. Since we put out this resource in May of last year, we've since drilled another 10,000 meters, and I'll tell you about that as we go through the presentation, because we think we've really built on the model and what we have there. You know, when you're looking at exploration companies, experienced management really does matter. It's something that I know as an investor, I look to invest with people that have made me money before, who know what they're doing, that are experts in their field, and I think that our leadership really has that. You know, I spent a good portion of my life running a private company through some pretty tough gold price times. It was a operating gold mine, and you know, really learned capital discipline and how all aspects of the business operate, from permitting to environmental assessment to the on-the-ground operations, and even developing you know, the networks to find the people that you need, which is a challenge in the Yukon right now. We're very lucky that we're well staffed up for this year. Our VP of Exploration, he's a very economic geologist, has been very successful in putting together the model that we have, which, you know, made the initial discovery at POWERLINE, and which we're seeing is continuing to hold true with our drilling from all of 2020. And Mark Aranto, our chairman, you know, he's been involved with Victoria Gold since they were at the same stage that Banyan was roughly 10 years ago, developing their first resource, and has been able to see Victoria Gold through that whole progression from developing a resource through feasibility study, permitting, financing, construction, and now operation. That brings us a wealth of experience. I think you'll also notice that every single one of our directors has a significant shareholding in Banyan, so they're very well vested. That's one of the things that I think is really important when you look at a management team. Do they have skin in the game? And most of them have participated in all the recent financings. So it's not just founder stock. They've continued to invest all along. And I'll tell you a little bit more about that in the next slide. Also, our relationship with Alexco is super important. Clint Nauman, you know, his team at Alexco know that this district very, very well. They've been instrumental to us, as well as Victoria Gold, and really add some strength to our team. So we went into this year with 5.8 million. We've put some money into a camp and early drilling and infrastructure, currently sitting at about 5.4 million with our phase 1 exploration program, that 15,000 meters, planned for 4.5 million. You'll notice that all of our warrants have been exercised. We have no more warrants. From the most recent financings, there were no warrants, but from the previous financings back in 2019, all of those warrants did come in. So it puts us in a great financial position, both from a hard dollar perspective as well as flow through. And we're going to get out there and continue to deliver value for our shareholders. We're starting to get some institutional investment, as well as looking for some coverage from some analysts and others as we move forward and tell the story. I think you'll see some more of that. Insiders at 9.2%. I'm just under 5% as a shareholder. And if anyone was following the SETI filings around Christmas and through last year, you'll know that between my husband and I, we put in a really significant amount, almost double my salary, into Banyan just last year. And those were at considerably higher prices. You'll notice that we took advantage of the strong market in the fall and some results, and did that last financing at 28 cents and 32.5 cents of the front end of charity flow through. So great position, continued ownership of Alexco and Victoria at 8.4 and 8.8%. Yukon's a great jurisdiction to work in from a COVID perspective. You know, very low case counts through the whole pandemic. I can actually say that about 85% of my crew that's working right now already has the vaccine. Most of them already have double or both shots. So I think we're going to see Yukon as a very busy place this year as we come out of this pandemic, particularly focused on gold and building on the success of Victoria Gold and Alexco. The Yukon's been a fabulous jurisdiction to be supportive of mining, both through making mining an essential service last year, but also their huge commitment to infrastructure. Talk a little bit about the power line they put in last year. They've made an additional commitment to more road infrastructure right near us. it really is a tier 1 jurisdiction to work in from that perspective. So here you can see our airstrip and power line deposits with the roads through them. The road that crisscrosses is actually the main highway, and that's the road that the Yukon government is committed to spend $63 million upgrading that highway. It also services Alexco and Victoria Gold. On the far left-hand side is the power line. And actually this last year, the brand new power line was put in there with twice the capacity, and the line that you see here is being decommissioned, but that means increased reliability, more capacity, and is a real benefit to us. This area even benefits from cell phone service. So first time I've ever had that problem of having cell phone service at the drill, but a really great problem to have, and the service has even become better over this last year, and we understand that there's more improvements going to be made to that as well. So we planned 15,000 meters focusing on primarily power line and Summit Airstrip, but really we're pretty confident we can continue to add both ounces and grade to both of the resources that we have. Our geological model or mineralization model is working. The other really important thing is to look about whether a deposit's potentially economic and what's the nearest analog to us, and that's Victoria Gold, just 40 kilometers down the road. Their life of mine grade is 0.63 grams per ton. And when you look at our deposit and you increase the cutoff grade to 0.3, the deposit remains a mineable deposit. The ounces go down by less than 15%, and the grade goes up by more than 20% to 0.65. Their recoveries at Victoria Gold are 74%. I think you'll see ours are pretty similar. Ours is also near surface, so we anticipate a low strip ratio. So we can look to them and say, well, what were their actual economics? What was the actual capital cost to build? And of course, they also now publish what their all-in sustaining costs are. So it'll be pretty easy for people to look at our deposit and understand what the potential economics might be, particularly as Victoria Gold continues to be successful and producing over 200,000 ounces per year and cash flowing over 100 million per year. They're definitely going to create a bit of a splash. So you'll see that our plans for this year are to continue to add ounces in grade. Last year, we added over 300 meters to the west at Airstrip. We added to the east, as well as 125 meters to the south and down dip, all with some long intersections, both showing higher grade over significant intercepts, similar, all of these above, or near that 0.65, and some significant widths where we're finding higher grades, and we think we can find continuous higher grades to actually bring the grade of the deposit up. We're particularly excited about the western end because we're seeing quite long intersections of some higher grade material. So POWERLINE, though, recall it was a blind discovery in 2019. This pitch shows where the 129,000 ounces of 0.61 is contained. It was really early days when we drilled that off. We were testing our model. We started with 4 holes in the spring of 2019, and then just put another 10 holes in the fall to get that resource. So we knew that we tapped into something. We didn't know how big it was. We knew it continued at depth and in all directions. So this last year we set out to test and to start to see if we could find the extent of that. And we're very pleased with what we found. We've now seen an extension here. This is a north-south section. You can see that we've now extended that known mineralization by 500 meters to the south in this section, including 68.5 meters of 1.07 grams. So some higher grade material, and it continues to be open in all directions and at depth here. So this is north-south. And then we thought we would test a little bit east-west, and we had a target at AuEq Hill, which I've talked about in several of my other presentations, but what I'm going to talk about a bit more today. We had the outline of the POWERLINE resource here is in this oval. That section, you can see the A to A prime, that's where the section, north-south section I just showed you is. Then we drilled 2.5 kilometers across to a target we called AurEq Hill. That's the B to B section, which you see in the top right-hand corner. And you can see we were pleasantly surprised that every single hole intersected mineralization, including some significant intercepts of 1 gram. So this to us says this is a very large system. We now have another 2.5 kilometers east-west from POWERLINE to AurEq Hill, where we have demonstrated mineralization that's fitting our mineralization model. So let's look at that in a slightly different view, and I've showed this image before but I think it really puts into perspective the scale of things. So the top left-hand corner there, that's the airstrip resource. That's where that 774,000 ounces is. Then the power line is just a little bit to the south of that. You can see there's no soil anomaly there. It's blind because it's obscured by overburden. And then you see this very large soil anomaly over to the east. There's the potential size in that for a couple airstrips, if not more. But you can now see where we drilled there across from POWERLINE into AuEq Hill with every hole hitting mineralization. And this section down in the bottom right-hand corner, C2C primed, you can see that we now have evidence that that soil anomaly is directly corresponding to mineralization. We're getting mineralization in every one of those drill holes where we see that strong soil anomaly, and in fact, a big 40-meter thick oxidation zone there, which is also very exciting. So we think there's a potential for the rest of the soil anomaly to correspond similarly to the gold in the bedrock. And we're going to test that this year, focus mostly on POWERLINE and AuEq Hill. We also used the historic RAB drill results from the late 90s as an analysis, and did an analysis to see if it would guide our exploration work. And there were some good results in those historic RAB results, like 40 meters of 1.18 and 15 of 1.44, all near surface. On average, those holes are probably 30 meters deep. And from that, we can see we've got a really large prospective area, over 10 square kilometers, where we did this analysis, and you can see the pink, the red, and the orange are roughly around what Victoria Gold's cutoff grade. Victoria Gold's cutoff grade is 0.15. And you can see there's widespread areas where it's over 0.4 for the top 30-40 meters, which is well above Victoria Gold, and substantive areas where we know that the surface 30 meters is going to be over Victoria Gold's cutoff grade. So it's a guide for our exploration, and certainly a lot stronger than just a soil anomaly. And it really is additive to our model. Has helped us to guide our work for this year. So as I said, we've already started drilling at POWERLINE, got 5 holes completed. The green holes are what we've planned for 2021 at the present time. And of course, we adapt our plan every hole. We look at the geology and make sure that we're focusing in on what we think the best targets are, and also adapting things based on seasonality. You can see most of the holes are around POWERLINE because we are very excited about our geological model there and what we've been seeing from 2020. We think we can add ounces very quickly there, as well as at our AuEq Hill. You can see we plan a grid around AuEq Hill as well. This image shows about 11,000 of the 15,000 meters that we plan to drill. We're going to get results back through the year and then continue to adapt the rest of our plan to decide where best we can add ounces and really add value for our shareholders. And we've been responding to the market in what we're planning this year. We've got lots more exploration targets on this property. We have our Nitra property, but we've chosen, particularly for this spring, to be very focused on showing that this property has the potential for a near-term 2 million ounces. And so we're going to continue to focus on POWERLINE and AuEq Hill because we think we can deliver that and really add ounces and thus value for our shareholders there. And once we get to that goal, I think that will be quite transformative for us, and we'll continue to gain market credibility as we get a larger deposit. The metallurgical work that we're doing is also very important. I've got this beautiful new image of visible gold from our core, as well as these petrographic images where we can see the gold occurring discretely in fractures within the arsenopyrite concurrently with pyrrhotite, which we thought was quite encouraging. We're using Forte Analytical, which is doing all of the work for Victoria Gold just down the road. They're doing the grade reconciliation and their metallurgical work, which gives us quite an advantage. They already are working in this area, the same age of mineralization, similar rock types. So we've got bottle rolls ongoing. We did drill 2 dedicated metallurgical holes, which we'll have them do some work on once we get those initial bottle rolls back. But or the stuff from the early days, the results from the early days are similar to what Victoria Gold had in their early days. And remember, their life of mine recovery is 74%. So we're certainly doing the right kind of work to advance this. ESG has been really important. I've seen more and more of it and had more people ask me about it. Now that Banyan has become a larger company. We're starting to advance that even more than we were doing before. We've been very engaged in the community right from the start, working closely with the Notchanaikdun First Nation, also with the charity that I run, Every Student Every Day, which just closed applications to give out $150,000 to communities in the Yukon to help students get to school. And in response to COVID, that's been very important. And, you know, developing those relationships with the community, with First Nations, is so critically important to the future of every project. And it's something we take very seriously. We also take the E and the G very seriously as well. We have increased our environmental programs, we've increased our safety programs, and we continually revise and review that. We're continuing to increase our governance as well. Now that we're a larger company, we want to be accountable to our shareholders and have them know that we're spending their money wisely and making good decisions. So I talked about AurMac. That's where we're focusing most of our time and effort this year. But I do like to remind people that we have another resource on our Hyland Gold property down near Watson Lake. It's also a on-surface, potentially heap leach mineable project that's road accessible, just 70 kilometers from the community of Watson Lake, grade of 0.85, 236,000 in the indicated and another 288,000 inferred. We think the time for this project's coming. We're planning a small program out there this year, really teeing it up for 2022. Here's a few more of the specifics on that property. This photograph actually shows you trenches which are right in mineralization on the top of that block model there. You can see what the resource looks like with this thickened hinge area right near the surface. That resource is in about 900 meters of strike length, and we've drilled that same structure off by another 1.2 kilometers. So we think you can arm wave and see that there's the potential for us to grow this to 1 million ounces. But really, I think the story here is to, again, to get to that threshold where you can see multi-million ounces, and a 2 million ounce, I think in the Yukon is sort of a minimum to get a standalone project. This project had column leach tests at 86%. Most of it is oxide within surface, but we have 186 square kilometers here, and that resource is just in 0.5 of a kilometer. So we have a huge land package that's very underexplored. We're going to do a little bit of work, tee it up for 2022, because we think that the time for heap leach projects, particularly at 0.85, when Victoria Gold is economic at 0.63, the time is coming for that project. So how do we compare, and what do we plan to do to get our dollars per ounce for our shareholders up? You can see we're currently sitting at a pretty low valuation at about $25 per ounce. You know, one of our nearest comparables might be Cardinal. That's at $34, $35 per ounce. They've got a 2 million ounce resource. But you can see as we continue to add ounces, we're going to add value for our shareholders and drive our share price. And that's our plan for this year, is to really advance our project by adding ounces and showing that this has the potential to be an economic project, to turn into a mine one day. So, you know, it's a great time to become an investor in Banyan. I think we're considerably underrated. My last share price purchase was the flow through at 28 cents in December. With, you know, what we're seeing, gold price is still a pretty strong gold price. Gold producers are still significantly cash flowing. They're continuing to see their resources deplete. We're right beside two mines, which are going to draw attention, but are also potentially going to be looking for acquisition targets. Victoria Gold's shown that this type of sub 1 gram material with a low strip ratio and a heap leach project works in the Yukon and is permittable in the Yukon. Our 2020 results are showing that the mineralization is much larger on this property than what is contained in our resource. Our mineralization model is working. We've got a pretty compelling valuation at $25 to $35 per ounce and a discovery cost on that initial resource of $2 per ounce. We think we can continue to add ounces at a low cost for our shareholders. And we're going to have news flows through the spring. We've already got samples in the lab from the start of that 1,500 meter program, and you can expect to have news from us throughout the year. So that's the summary. Look forward to some questions from all of you, and hope that you'll all watch the story.
Thank you very much, Tara. That was an incredibly thorough presentation. So you doing a good job is going to make my job harder, but I'll try not to hold it against you. So, In terms of questions, I have a couple from the audience, but there's a couple things that I want to touch on in a little bit more detail. You had mentioned that your geological model is really holding up. Is there anything that you've learned over the past year that's changed or reinforced your views on the region?
Well, I think that what's really been important were those drill holes at POWERLINE, where we really started to understand the structural component that was coming in there. It was quite the airstrip is quite stratigraphically controlled, so we really put a focus on some oriented core and understanding what's going on structurally. And I think that has also shown that our model is working with the holes that have come to the south. It was really important to then go back and see, well, how did we model it in the resource, and does this apply? And then it all worked out. So it's helped us to understand what kind of a spacing we're going to need for being able to move things into a resource as we go forward, because every deposit's different, right? And you have an optimum spacing for drilling holes, and that's important, because you don't want to drill too far away and not be able to include it in a resource, but you don't want to drill more holes than you have to get to that next level.
I think that's a very logical approach. It is quite a long drill season that you're going to have this year. I believe you're one of two companies that's currently drilling in the Yukon, or at least in this region. Does that mean that you're going to get assays back from the lab faster? Like, how does that affect your turnaround time? I know last year was very trying for a lot of juniors and producers in terms of the lab turnaround times. What are you anticipating for this season?
Well, we're certainly anticipating better times. That was one of the conversations that we had over the winter with all the labs, and we went out to get both quotes for prices, because we've got a big program this year, as well as what your timelines were, what their timelines were going to be, and what their commitments were going to be. Last year I think the labs all just kind of went, well, we're not really making a timeline commitment. But having a big program and going into the year finance put us a little bit different position. And there is competition out there between labs to get the business. So, we've selected a lab because we think that it has, it's given us a good timeline optionality. We really want to be able to get results back within a month, and then be able to get results out to shareholders in a timely manner. And in order to do that, we need the lab to, and there were lots of challenges in hiring people for them, but hopefully they've worked it out, and we hope that they'll stand by their commitments they've made.
And how is labor in the region?
I think it's going to be challenging in the summer months, because we have Victoria Gold and Alexco, and of course mines, they draw a lot of the local labor force, and people that want very regular jobs. There are a lot of people that love the early exploration phase as well. And the Yukon knows mining and exploration, so there is a good labor force there. We spent quite a bit of time looking for people over the winter, and we were hiring early. We've already got our crews out there, and because we're out early, I think we've been able to hire some really good people early that will stay with us for the year. Lots of exploration seasons are only 2 to 3 months, and people have the option of picking a longer season and more work.
And I believe you mentioned to me yesterday that you made some upgrades to the accommodations for the staff.
Yeah, so last year and the last couple of years, we were able to stay in Alexco's camp. But with building a mine and then them needing additional space with the requirements for COVID, and it really became difficult for us to stay there. We then moved out to some other nearby accommodation, but then we had pretty significant drive time, which, decrease long term is going to increase your exploration costs. So we made the choice to actually put in a camp, or expand our existing camp, and then start to build the camp, which we'd permitted in our original permit. Which means we have a little bit more cost, and people can see that because we've burned a little bit more money early in the season than we would normally. But long term, that's going to pay off, because it'll keep our costs down and keep our transportation costs down.
Makes sense. And then just going to the audience, there's one question there. So I know this is sort of a longer, more detailed question, but I have a question about timeline to production. So assuming that you continue to build out your resources, take it through all the studies required to put a mine into production, what sort of timeline do you think it would take to have one of these deposits actually producing?
So I think the best example would be to use a real world example from Victoria Gold, which is a Victoria Gold. So they permitted, they had an original feasibility study, they went into environmental assessment, and they were fully permitted within 5 years. Which, they were the first ones through that environmental assessment process, and they changed their feasibility study. So they redesigned their project partway through, which always adds time. They set an excellent template for other people coming through, particularly since our project is a similar heap leach mine project. So there's lots that we can learn from their application. In addition, we're able to, Victoria Gold and Alexco as our partners, we're already talking to them about using some of their environmental data, water quality data, which will save us a lot of time and money. We have started our baseline environmental, which would be needed for permitting. So it really depends on what project you're going to permit, how long it would be. But I would envision that depending on what it is, a reasonable time for permitting a project, once you actually have a resource and a feasibility study, is probably 3 to 5 years. So, that an amendment to an existing mine potentially could be done faster than that. But as a standalone project, that's probably a realistic timeline based on historical averages. We think we might have some advantages, though, given that we've seen our two neighbors in permitting and we've got their templates.
And you've got some pretty decent shareholders that would probably support you in progressing things.
Absolutely.
Okay. One thing that I've always found interesting about the company is your choice of names for some of your targets are based around the infrastructure in the area. That's obviously a key advantage that you have being situated where you are. You had mentioned that there are some upgrades to the infrastructure that have been planned or that have been executed. Can you go into a little bit more detail exactly what those are and what that means for Banyan Gold?
Sure. Well, the power line was just a new power line was just constructed, actually. It's the main power line that goes to the hydroelectric dam and then down to the community of Mayo and connects to the grid, the whole Yukon grid. So pretty key power line. It services both Alexco and Victoria and goes right through our property. We actually also have Victoria Gold substation right on our property. They've also been doing upgrades to that substation as well. So what that means is that the line is more reliable. It was quite an old line that was there. So they've doubled the capacity of electricity that can go on the line, as well as it'll mean increased reliability for Victoria Gold, Alexco, and all future users. The other really significant upgrades that are planned and was just announced a couple of weeks ago is that they're going to put $63 million into upgrading the main highways, to Mayo, up to Alexco, and to Victoria, which again is right through our property and will benefit us and our ability to get to our property. So, that work probably won't start for another year or so, which is fine. Long term, it's going to result in lower capital costs for whatever happens for AurMac.
Okay, great. And you mentioned that you're doing a 15,000 meter drill program over the course of the spring and summer, and you are fully funded for that currently?
Yes, we are. Yeah, no, it's we really have targeted that to really add ounces at primarily POWERLINE and AuRex Hill. We wanted to have 2 drills operating continuously rather than wait for summer and have a more focused drill program with a larger number of drills, because that lets us have a continuity of crews. We have 3 drill crews that'll be servicing 2 drills and rotate. And I think drill crews are going to be in a lot of competition this year as well, with the number of programs that could be happening in the Yukon. So that's a bit of an advantage for us. And then, we'll have really strong news flow in the fall with all those results coming back.
Okay. And I just had a question to clarify exactly what the dollar amount of your budget for the year was.
We've allocated $4.5 million for exploration.
Okay, great. And then I had another question, just going back to some of the shareholders that you have in Banyan. Could you please explain the ownership deal with Banyan and the other Yukon investors, Victoria, etc.? Seems like some sort of earnout. seems like the obvious exit strategy. What's going to prevent Banyan from exiting too early?
Well, I think the most important thing is that I'm a pretty big shareholder, and I want the best outcome for my equity holdings as well as everybody else's. Second, we have Victoria Gold and Alexco at 8.4 and 8.8%. And our deal with them on acquiring the properties was that we did issue them some shares, but they've also both participated and continued almost pro rata in various financings to participate. So it's not just we've given them shares for the property, they have actually put in equity for that ownership. And then, I guess the earn in property, we've already earned 51%, which we announced in December. We've already made the expenditures, the exploration expenditures on the Alexco side to earn 75%. And we have a clear path to earning 100%, where they would drop down to an NSR. And it's both gold and silver metals NSR, where we can buy down the gold royalty to 1%, or whomever can buy down the gold royalty to 1% and 2% on silver. So it's a little bit complicated, but we also on the Victoria Gold side, we anticipate we will make the full expenditures to earn 75% this year. And then we would have to issue some additional shares or pay cash, I think $600,000 to Alexco and Victoria Gold to earn 100%. So it is a potential exit strategy. Lots of people hypothesize that Victoria Gold, Alexco, or Cisco might be competitors for us. Victoria Gold, yep, they have a heap leach mine. They're going to be cash flowing. They're going to be looking to add ounces, and whether they do that internally or they look to acquire something, that is an option for our shareholders. Alexco, the principals there, they built the Viceroy mine before, turning their sights on Keno Hill. They're very experienced in how heap leach mines operate, very experienced in permitting. They're a potential suitor, and I don't think they would let Victoria Gold pay less than what they think fair value is. And of course, the Cisco development, they're very knowledgeable. They were involved in building Victoria Gold, and the principals have been involved in numerous successful gold deposits in Canada and elsewhere. And so, they also know the value of a heap leach mine. And really, that's my job, is to advance this as fast as I can and show that it has value to get more shareholders and more interest in the property and increase its value, because that's how shareholders are going to, and my own shareholding is going to increase in value.
And so what do you think that is? Like, what size do you have to take this to, or what do you have to show with the project to have some of those players step up and put Banyan into play, hypothetically, of course?
Well, I think that 2 million ounces is a economic threshold as well as a psychological threshold in the Yukon, where somebody goes, they're at 2 million ounces. That is when I think people will go, I think I better start paying attention. And so that's why our goal is to really advance this as quick as we can. And considering we can see where we need to go to do that, we think that's how we're going to add the most value. We're going to spend a little bit of time on our exploration targets, but not very much, because we think the best value is really getting that resource up as fast as we can.
So in terms of meters drilled and time, how long until you think you get to that 2 million ounce target?
Well, I'm an optimist. I'm saying that we would update the resource in 2022, or as soon as we can see that we have near that target at a grade that we think the market will appreciate. I don't want to rush it, because you don't want to disappoint. And we're going to continue to update our 3D models on our website so that everybody can see it. You can already go to our website and look at the 3D model for where we've added at Airstrip. We will be updating it for POWERLINE once we get all our results in and throughout the year. And I think that'll help tell the story. And I plan on my next webinar to actually have that 3D model up for both POWERLINE and Airstrip, so that everybody can take a look at it. But it is on our website, and it's a pretty useful tool.
Okay, and then I have a question from somebody that's obviously more geologically advanced than myself, so bear with me. Um, could you explain the geologic model just a little bit more? What is the heat engine? What is structurally controlling the sulfides and gold? And why is it in the sediment units?
Well, those are all really good questions, and we haven't found the heat source yet. Newmont once had this property under option, and they hypothesized about a buried intrusive that was the heat source generating all this near surface gold. We haven't drilled deep holes where, they found a breccia. We haven't drilled the deep holes where they thought the heat source would be, because we've been focusing on the near surface open pit mineable, less than 200 meters from surface, that we would think would be the most economic deposit to get started on. Yes, we intend to do more work on where the heat source is, as we've looked at the structural, we've done a structural analysis with the LiDAR and looked at the geophysics. But we have two models actually on the property. The airstrip model, we're seeing that the gold is really contained within this calcareous schist unit, which is really differentiable from the calcareous nature. Otherwise, the schists above and below look all the same, but geochemically we can track it. So we have about this 90 to 110 meter thick package of rocks dipping about 30 degrees that's pervasively mineralized. We do know there's gold in the hanging wall and the footwall in other units, and we know that there are cross-cutting veins, and some of which are those late phase veins, which prospector Bernie Kraft took out over 16 tons of 2-ounce material just from the western end of the airstrip. And so that's a higher grade target later phase. We're not focused on that right now because we think we can add the most ounces with this big bulk tonnage target. And then, have, with a little luck, maybe you find some of that higher grade, and looking at our structural analysis as we continue to build out the story. POWERLINE's a little different. We have, in the resource model, you'll see there are roughly 2 tabular bodies that the mineralization is contained in, less of that calcareous association and more structural control. And that's something that we'll be spending a lot of time on this year, is understanding the structural controls and some of the oriented core, and trying to figure out where the heat sources are. Our 2020 drilling's kind of indicating that maybe it's increasing to maybe 4 layers that we're seeing at POWERLINE that are hosting mineralization. So stay tuned on that. We're definitely digging into that and have added to our technical capacity at site to help us continue to build that story. So, and maybe there's the heat source on our property. It's a big mineralized system that affected the AurMac property. We're right beside and that's probably the same system that created the gold at Victoria Gold. And then you've got the big silver system of Keno Hill that, I know talking to Clint Nauman, he calls it a new metallogenetic district, and that we're on the cusp of really understanding what's going on in the district and where all the metal came from.
Well, my bet's on you for finding it.
Well, I've got some pretty smart neighbors, so they're definitely a big part of helping us unlock the secrets.
Okay, so 2 last questions. They both deal with M&A. So let's start with, are you looking at expanding into base metals projects in the future, or any other commodity?
So, I guess that's partly because we're right beside Alexco and very high grade silver. And, there is, if you look at some of our slides where we show the geochemical coverage, we do have some areas with elevated lead and zinc. And we have seen some Keno Hill, small stringers of those types of veins. Right now, though, I think we can add the most value for our shareholders by focusing on gold. The model that we have, are $2 per ounce, and hopefully we can stay, under $10 or so on the next resource per ounce. I think that's where we're going to deliver the most value. There is some potential there. Are we looking for M&A projects in the base metals? I don't think that would be the best value for our shareholders right now, particularly with how successful we've been on our model. I think we really need to see this through on focusing on AurMac.
Makes sense. And what's the current sentiment on the M&A environment in the Yukon?
It's hard to know what's going on for other people. There's been talk of it, and you hear lots of rumors that there's interest in M&A. But until we actually see some of it happen, it's a long ways from discussions to things actually happening. I do think there could be some consolidation, particularly some of the smaller companies. I like to think that that we're going to get ourselves further down the road before people start talking about us that way.
Definitely. Well, I think your approach right now, just proving out the potential size, should help you with your share price appreciation in a normal environment, which hopefully we get a good gold tape again this year.
And just back on that question a little bit, Deborah, that's one of the things that COVID's really affected. So these online conferences, it's really hard to get a sense of what's going on broadly and with other companies. And I think when we get back to in-person meetings, you'll get a bit better sense of what's going on with M&A, because we're all in our own little bubbles right now. And for me, we've done a bunch of marketing and a lot of one-on-ones and quite a few webinars, but you really get the sense of what's going on by the chatter that happens at a lot of the conferences. And that's kind of missing. So, hopefully we'll see that by late summer, early fall, we can actually have conversations with other people beyond ourselves. And it's actually been a good thing that we haven't been too focused on talking to other people, because we've really been able to set ourselves up well for 2021 and set our focus on operational things, which is long-term going to deliver value.
No, I think you're absolutely correct. I mean, people always say Beaver Creek's one of the best M&A conferences because people are all trapped in two bars together and come up with these different structures and deals and stuff. So hopefully, I know that they're actually planning a hybrid conference. So hopefully some of us will be in person.
Hopefully.
And I think that is a really important thing for M&A in particular, and just networking for the industry in general. But I've certainly noticed a change in the sentiment this year for interest in the gold space, unfortunately. But I think people are also just tired of the online format, even though I'm in the middle of an online session. But I agree with you. I think people are looking forward to getting back to some of the regular business activities. So that's it for questions from the audience as well as for myself. And the second part of the question that I asked about M&A was just thank you for taking my questions, and I really appreciate the approach Banyan is taking on sharing information. And I agree, I think you've done an exceptional job of laying out, both with this presentation and throughout the year that I've known you, just exactly what your objectives are, and just knocking them down one by one. And I think, I'm excited to see the drill program, but you're very process driven and I appreciate it. I think it makes it very clear for investors. So keep up the good work. And
yeah, thanks. Well, I really believe you need to tell people what you're going to do and what they should expect, and then deliver on that. And I think we've done that, particularly in the last 2 years. We set out to what we were going to do. We delivered on that. I think we exceeded people's expectations, and hopefully we can do that again this year.
Certainly. Well, 2020 was a transformative year for the company, and I think you're set up nicely to have another one of those in 2021. So good luck with the drilling. Looking forward to seeing the results. And definitely an interesting story to follow. I think it's great that you're going to have one of the longest drill seasons in the region. I know a lot of investors play the region seasonally for a trade. Not that I would suggest that someone, strap on a trade or anything, but if you're going to play that trade, you may as well be there with the one that's drilling the longest, right?
Well, that has a proven track record. Like, we've got some great, our geological model is it's pretty exciting what we're finding there. So I think it's going to be pretty exciting. I can hardly wait for the results back. So it's kind of like waiting for Christmas. So there's nobody pushing the labs more than me.
It's like waiting for COVID to end.
Exactly. Well, that might take longer. At least Christmas has a date.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I'm hopefully the turnaround time is shorter, like you said, and the fact that there's less people drilling right now should mean that at least in the front end of the season, you should be getting the results back. And you've got your metallurgical results coming this year as well, and a bunch of other news flow. So looking forward to it. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for the update.
Thanks to everybody for joining us, and don't hesitate to reach out if you want more information. I'm always available to talk to shareholders.
Great. Well, have a great afternoon, everyone.